Today's opening session focuses on the question what the necessary reforms in support for science for policy, of course, and how the EU as well as national governments can support their successful implementations. And without losing any time, we have two speakers, and the first one being the Directorate-General at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Structural Reform. Please welcome Nava.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Very happy to be here. Let's be scientific also in this speech. I mean, we'll do something very simple, problem identification, and then options for solutions. Problem identification in science for policy, I think, is what an economist would call a mismatch between what is demanded to public administrations. Progressively, we will demand more and more to public administration. We demand them of becoming project designers, project manager. We demand them to cope with things that were not even imaginable or that happens once every 100 years, like a pandemic. We demand them to cope with things like war, which also we hope it happens very rarely, although recently is more frequent. So we have lots of demand on one side. And on the other side, of course, the other side of the equation is that there are challenges because the past was different, and the ability of public administration to come up with scientific evidence in order to inform the decision making is very limited. And furthermore, what we want is that this approach, a scientific approach, is not a sporadic one, but is rather a structural one. So that's, I think, the problem identification, the first part of what I wanted to tell you. The second part of what I wanted to tell you is, once we have identified this problem, how we can solve it. And that's where my DG and the TSI enters at play, and that's what we can offer. The first thing, of course, is the institutional level. At the institutional level, whenever we have an interaction with the member states, and we have here today with us Minister Havrda, with whom we have had interactions. We have interactions with many other member states. But the first thing is to try to create what we call a dedicated structure. So try to create a mechanism whereby it becomes nearly natural to channel the science evidence and to channel science into the decision making. That's the very first thing, what we call the dedicated structure. The second thing, of course, is again is very good to have something which is able to take what science has to offer for informing a decision, but you also need to make sure that this is properly understood and integrated into the decision making. So the second point, which is a point on which we insist a lot, is the point of skills. On the side, more with due respect of the receiver, so of the policymakers, rather than science. Skills of science are given for known. Often, as we know, the language of science may need to adapt to the task of the policy making, but also, of course, the policymakers may need to rise, if I may say so, to the challenge they have. The third element is what I was saying at the very beginning, is that we wouldn't like this to be just a sporadic event. I think it's very good if every government somehow interiorizes this and makes of it a structural solution. How do you make of that a structural solution? In a very simple way, by trying to anticipate. We are not short of anticipations, we are not short of foresight. We know very well what the next crisis will probably be. We know very well that this summer was the hottest of the last 50 years, but the coolest of the next 50. So, for example, we know very well that in the area of environment and climate, there is certainly a need for that. And so there are mega trends, basically, and I believe that several governments have a sort of a foresight unit whose task is really the one to try to anticipate the mega trends. So these are the three elements. On these three elements, we support member states to put these three elements in place with the TSI. As you know, the TSI is a technical support instrument which works by collecting the request of member states and then choosing inevitably, because it's a competitive mechanism, choosing inevitably between member states, and then helping member states to institutionalize this dialogue between science and policy making. And as I said, this institutionalization goes through those three elements. And finally, the final point that I want to make is that when we do all of that, what we notice is that there is an exchange between science and governments, which can be scalable to other governments. Governments may learn between them, governments, public administrations, or whatever level, a big region of a big country with another country, or different countries can learn together. And this is the reason why nearly 2 years ago, at the European Commission, we set up what we call an expert group on public administration. This expert group on public administration has exactly the purposes to allow public administration and governments to share best practices, but in particular also to share the way they integrate science into that. So thank you very much for that. Many thanks to Magda and all the others of DDG with whom we have been working a lot for these important topics, and have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mario, and let's really integrate these scientific methods through all the day. This is something very, very good to keep in the back of our minds. And we also have the Czech Deputy Minister for European Affairs, Marek Havrda. Marek, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here at this excellent conference. I might not be that scientific because I want to share a personal experience with you. I would like to share experience on implementing reforms towards policy based on the evidence-informed policymaking, which I initiated and co-lead. Now, in 18 months, we have built and institutionalized at the center of the government an aid team, which now supports line ministries with the major reforms in the country, such as affordable housing and vulnerable children care. The team has many people who has PhDs, and we are scaling the team now. I would like to share with you the experience of how we managed to build that team as quickly as we manage, and what might be some of the elements. And then I would like to talk a little bit about the challenges which we face. And at the end, I would like to mention how the TSI helps us. I came from AR R&D startup, and naturally I opted for a very agile approach how we build the team at the center of the government. We had very robust preparation, very clear idea what we want to reach in terms of structure and processes. And not only we had the idea in our heads, we had it in writing. We commissioned an NGO to help us to write it down before we came to the government. Second, recruitment. We started very early. We started the recruitment very early, months, half a year ago, before we actually institutionalized the structure. So we had excellent people the day one, basically, when we started. Third, cost-free. We under strong austerity measures in the Czech Republic because we inherited a huge debt after previous populist government. So basically there is no money left in the government. So we made it cost-free, basically. We started with several posts at the cabinet, at the political level, and then we enlarged through posts donated by the other ministries. So we had 11 ministries which we convinced that they donated us their posts. Four, we made sure we had someone to navigate the bureaucratic jungle, just the transfer of the post from the ministries to the office of the government is a scientific project in itself, and we knew we need to have someone who is able to do it. And we had the person, and we have the person, it's my closest peer, at the very high level. We have it at the deputy level, at the deputy minister level. And finally, redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. We had redundancy in everything. In structures, how we will make it. If this will not fly, we will go other way or other way. We had it all scenarios prepared. Redundancy in financing. Again, we had several scenarios how we go about it. So what are the major challenges which may as well serve for the inspiration for some of the joint efforts? Having people from the academia at the center of the government is a challenge in itself, as we've been discussing yesterday and we will continue discussing today. First is different time horizons. Academics are just not used to speed which we need to be working in the government, which sounds funny if you look at it from the outside, but this is a pure fact. This is not only about crisis, and we live in a poly-crisis environment, but it is for a normal situation, for the normal legislative procedure, and for normal four-year cycle, which we hope for because we have a coalition government, as many countries do. So sometimes you don't even have time to finish your four-year cycle. So we don't have years, we have weeks, maximum months, 3-4 months is a maximum which we can allot for the analysis. Second is a mismatch of motivation. Scientists want to create new knowledge. So the motivation is very strong, the intrinsic, the internal motivation. And I think together we need to work on kind of showing that putting the knowledge in practice is actually creating a new knowledge. Because what we need most is, of course, do a meta-analysis, do the lit review. We need to have solid state-of-the-art of the area which we're trying to address. And lastly, which seems maybe not important, but it is at the end, is focus and style. The academics just write differently and they think differently. So often they actually concentrate on the minor points. There is lots of uncertainty. But these minor points we need to understand as policymakers, but we don't have time to spend pages and pages on them to trying to solve them and create actually a new research needs, what is a natural thing, what we researchers do. Added value of TSI project, and many thanks for DG Reform for running the program and being so efficient. And I will not go now to institutional setting, which is great in my view, because we don't have to run public procurement, so I'm just mentioning this on site. But three areas where I see really added value of the two projects which are actually focused on evidence-informed policymaking, and we are involved, and great colleagues from JRC, and I see here in the front, and OECD, and I see Stefan somewhere around here as well, help us. First is ensuring that we are on the right course. So it helps us to assure ourselves. It gives us confidence, the internal team gets the confidence. Second is making sure that we are at the state of the art, both in methods, in approaches, in anything you can think about evidence-informed policymaking. At least in one area, and this is a sustainability for regulatory impact assessment, we would like to actually move the front line a little bit more together with the colleagues from the OECD, and we just started working on that TSI project. And finally, and probably the most important, is legitimization inside the government. So it helps us actually to show this is not something special which you think would be good. No, this is a mainstream and we need to implement it. Well, thank you very much and have a great day today.